At exactly 6:03 a.m. on a Thursday, I stood at my kitchen window watching Patricia Garrison, our HOA president, stride across my yard in her trademark neon pink workout gear. She glanced around like a cartoon villain before driving her foot into my trash can, sending it tumbling into the street. What she didn't know was that I had finally set up my crowning invention, a motion-trigger device that would end her garbage harassment once and for all. The moment the lid flew open from her kick, a deafening wave of pre-recorded dog barks, 120 decibels strong, blasted from a hidden speaker inside. At the same instant, a pressure sensor released a cloud of biodegradable neon orange powder, covering Patricia from head to toe in what looked suspiciously like radioactive cheese dust. Her scream could probably be heard 3 blocks away. I calmly sipped my coffee as she stumbled backward, tripped over her own feet, and landed squarely in Mrs. Peterson's rose bushes. My perfectly positioned security camera caught the entire spectacle in crystal-clear HD. After 6 long months of her nonsense, justice had finally arrived at 742 Sycamore Ridge Drive, and it was glowing orange. My name is David Brennan. I'm a software developer who works from home. 2 years ago, I moved to Pine Valley Estates, convinced I had found a peaceful, well-kept neighborhood ideal for focusing on my work. What I didn't realize was that this community was ruled by Patricia Garrison, a 53-year-old former retail manager who treated the HOA like her personal kingdom. Patricia was the kind of person who carried a ruler to measure lawn height and once fined a neighbor $75 for leaving Christmas lights up until January 2nd. She wore her HOA badge everywhere, even to the grocery store, and enforced the bylaws as if they were divine law. My troubles began about 6 months ago, when Patricia showed up at my door with a clipboard, pointing out that my trash can wasn't placed correctly. According to Bylaw 17 to 4 subsection B, containers had to be positioned 18 inches from the curb with handles facing the street. I apologized, adjusted the can, and assumed that was the end of it. I couldn't have been more wrong. The following week she claimed my lid wasn't fully shut, a violation of Bylaw 23-2. The week after, she said the can was out 15 minutes too early. Then, it wasn't perfectly perpendicular to the curb, off by 2 degrees, apparently. Each supposed violation came with an official HOA letter dropped in my mailbox, delivered with the drama of a court summons. I did my best to follow every absurd rule, but Patricia was never satisfied. Soon, things escalated. I started noticing my trash can mysteriously tipped over every Thursday after pickup. At first, I thought it was wind, or maybe kids messing around, until one morning I caught Patricia casually strolling by and giving Mike a sharp kick. When I confronted her, she denied everything and smugly suggested I should buy a heavier can. The smirk on her face told me all I needed to know. So, I set up a security camera aimed at my driveway. Sure enough, the footage revealed Patricia deliberately knocking my can over week after week, even dragging it across my lawn. When I presented the evidence at the HOA meeting, she brushed it off as inconclusive, and her board of loyal friends backed her up. Then, unbelievably, she fined me $100 for improper trash storage, even though she was the one moving the can. For months, the harassment continued. Patricia would knock over my can, then immediately send me a violation notice. It was a petty, well-orchestrated game of control. I tried everything, securing the can with bungee cords. She cut them. Weighing it down with sandbags, she knocked those over, too, even talking to her husband Roger, who just shrugged and said he never got involved in her HOA business. That's when I decided, if she wanted to play dirty, I'd play smart. I spent 3 weeks designing the ultimate revenge. The system was simple but brilliant, a motion sensor wired to a mini-computer board that triggered 2 mechanisms. First, a speaker blasting obnoxious sounds, dogs barking, car alarms, and even bagpipes. Second, my true masterpiece, a compressed air release that fired a cloud of bright orange powder made from cornstarch and food dye. Safe, washable, but impossible to ignore. I tested it thoroughly in my garage, tweaking the sensitivity so it wouldn't activate by accident. Everything was perfectly legal, the noise under city limits, the powder certified non-toxic. I even put a tiny warning label on the can reading protected by security system, though I knew Patricia's ego would ensure she ignored it. The morning of the showdown, I sat at my kitchen window, coffee in hand, phone ready to record. Patricia arrived like clockwork, smug as ever, probably extra pleased after sending me a fine the day before for having a single dandelion in my yard. She approached Maiken with the confidence of someone who never faced consequences. But this time, she did. Her kick set everything off flawlessly. The sudden blast of barking made her leap 3 feet in the air. Then the orange powder engulfed her in a perfect cloud. The look on her face, pure shock and horror, was worth every hour of effort. She tried to run but slipped on the powder coating my driveway, arms flailing before crashing into the rose bushes. Within minutes, she was at my door, coated in orange dust, screaming for me to open up. I calmly called the police, reporting that someone who had just vandalized my property was trespassing and acting aggressively. When officers arrived, Patricia ranted about chemical attacks and demanded I be arrested. She looked like a traffic cone as she shrieked about illegal traps. The officers could barely contain their laughter. I showed them the footage of her vandalizing my can, along with a compilation of 23 prior incidents. Officer Miller informed her that I was well within my rights and that the powder was harmless. He then cited Patricia for vandalism and criminal mischief, $500 fine, plus a warning that further harassment would lead to criminal charges. And the best part? The footage mysteriously appeared on the neighborhood Facebook group within hours. The video went viral locally, with neighbors flooding the comments with their own horror stories about Patricia. Turns out, I wasn't her only victim. She had fined people for bird feeders being 2 inches too tall, mailboxes the wrong shade of black, even cats sitting in windows. That very evening, an emergency HOA meeting was held. Patricia showed up, still faintly orange, trying to keep her authority. But one by one, neighbors stood up with evidence of her harassment. Mr. Henderson had $2,000 in fines over 3 years. The Johnsons had 47 warning letters about their garden gnome. Even Patricia's vice president admitted she was fed up. The vote of no confidence was unanimous, except Patricia's own. She was stripped of her position immediately and banned from the board for 5 years. Her face turned crimson beneath the orange tint. She stormed out, chair toppling behind her, vowing we'd all regret it. 3 days later came another blow. Her employer, a dental practice where she worked as an office manager, placed her on leave after the viral video surfaced. Eventually, she was fired for damaging the company's reputation. And it didn't stop there. 27 neighbors filed a joint complaint with the state attorney general over misuse of HOA funds. Investigators discovered Patricia had misappropriated more than $15,000, including overpaying her nephew as a compliance officer. She was charged with embezzlement and fraud. 6 months later, in court, Patricia still claimed she was innocent, insisting she was just upholding neighborhood standards. The judge disagreed. She was sentenced to 2 years probation, 300 hours of community service cleaning public spaces, and ordered to repay $23,000 to the HOA. As the sentence was read, Patricia's jaw dropped. She let out a dramatic wail, collapsed into her chair, and muttered about injustice while the courtroom looked on.